wena manje kuseMozambique ngathi lento seyisulele egazini.
Ubaleka isipani la ekhaya.
Ambassador Workshop
Uyabona ukuthi kuyatshisa manje.
platform sayithetha offline. Sayithetha offline leyo ke yenyam nawe C2 njengama-community.
Okay, in 1 more minute most, I think we will have to respect people's time and shoot ahead. The rest will actually just join us as we move along. I'm one of those people who actually respect time quite a lot, so I don't want us to waste people's time.
Agreed, Chair. Chair, I suggest we start. One philosopher once advised that better few but better. So I'm not chasing numbers, notwithstanding the challenges, but I think it's more of a qualitative discussion than quantitative. So I suggest we start, hopefully then people will join.
Awesome. Okay. I'm just looking at our guest. He's probably busy getting ready. But thank you very much. Welcome, comrades, in one of our series like topics for today as part of the XMK strategic directions. My role is actually quite very simple, is to be Moses' sidekick. So I'm actually just supporting him. This is his show. So what I'll do, I will introduce our guest speaker. I just want him a little bit settled. Now, I actually used to box. That's one thing that you might, those who don't know me coming from Tanzania. So whenever I see a box a little bit edgy, I always worry, are we going to have a fight or a runner? So now I just want to make sure that at least our, our speaker is actually quite settled, and he is settled, and that is very good. So I will actually just be brief and just read his biography as it is, so that at least we have an idea who are we talking about. Now, the name is Mujaki Kiabetwa Mujaki. He grew up in Katlehong, active student leader in 1976, arrested in October and released April 1977, and embraced Christianity and became a leader of SCM. Became a leader of SCM, and yes, he was also a lay preacher and an evangelist. Became politically active at Teflop as a member of Student Union of Christian Action, Suka and Azaso. Released from detention alone and marched, across alone. He fled the country. He studied in the USSR and joined MK in Angola. He was a commissar in Angola, and then of course he's a founding member of the Department of Religious Affairs, and he was a representative, of the department in Tanzania. He's also a teacher, well, a former teacher now, and also a political education officer of the ANC in the Free State. He was deployed as the director in the Department of Police, Roads and Transport in the Free State, and he is retired now. And effectively, what he does is to see if he can actually help us make sense of some of the issues that we actually are facing. So I'll actually just say welcome, Mujaki. And I think if you can just make sure that you are nicely relaxed so that at least we can be able to see your whole face. I can see that we're like almost cutting, the camera is almost cutting your head a little bit. But that's fine as long as you are relaxed. That will actually be quite good. Moss, the show is yours. I hand it over to you. Thank you. Commissar Moss.
Am I audible?
Now you are. You were not audible before.
I'm sorry, I was muted. I was saying, let me echo what you've said, appreciating the presence of everybody, but also the indulgence of Comrade, I used to call him Preston. When he came to Angola, I received. It's one of those I received. We went a journey to a point where I didn't know that it's got poetic potential. We recited poetry together, one of those that normally when we meet, we remind ourselves and recite together, called A Soldier at War. So I'm happy that he's agreed, and let's listen to one of the critical topics. I think it's important just to foreground our discussion, to say that this is a continuation of a series of discussions we've had as an initiative of former commissars and combatants to try and say, now that there is a direction towards unity conference of the MK, there is the 60th anniversary, there is a renewal program and unity program of the ANC. What is it we can do as MK in that journey? And we have started with political discussions that were focusing on policy issues of the ANC, one of which was the electoral system and its relevance in the current conjuncture. We discussed the National Democratic Revolution and its relevance and so forth. Topics that were actually meant to reposition MK role in shaping the policy trajectory of the ANC. And we all consented that from November, anticipating the Unity Conference, we then give a much more better focus on MK-specific topics. And when then we started, we said, okay, fine, let's give an overarching discussion that seeks to dissect the issue of what's the role of MK in helping the ANC renew and unite, and vice versa. What would be the role of the ANC in helping MK renew and unite? So we saw it as a dialectical connection between the two, who historically have always influenced one another, with MK all the time wanting to strengthen the ANC. So it is that topic that perhaps Preston will help us dissect. And as usual, the rules are the same. We need critical thinking. We need robust discussion. We need a very focused discussion that lends us towards being able to make meaningful input, both in the conference of MK and the coming platforms that are coming. So Preston, welcome to the party. The stage is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissar Mostema. You are one of the few people that I'm very proud of to have associated and learned a lot from in the past. Even though you are younger than me, but you are always my commissar and my senior commissar. I appreciate that. I have been tasked, dear comrades. Let me start my discussion by saying thank you, Comrade Commissar Moss, Comrade Malik, for inviting me, the comrades in the commissariat, Prep Corps, our former commanders and commissars of our glorious movement, cadres, colleagues, combatants, and compatriots who have switched on today into this meeting. I was tasked with bringing together the ideas and comprehension embedded in our hearts and minds, all of us having served at different levels and times as soldiers of Umkhonto weSizwe. It will therefore be a futile exercise for me to relate the historical character of MK paying tribute to our earliest martyrs like Wisdom Mini and crisscrossing to Kalusha Mashangu, Kayele Moerani, and Bani Molokwan will be simply opening wounds we try hard to cover so that they may heal. Mentioning the travesty of Wankisi Polilo campaign and the 1982-84 event following the Eastern Front battles will only be relevant if we are recording our true history and evolution of our protracted and painful struggle. I will therefore not undermine the historical knowledge to the fact or rekindle your memories of the bloody and grievous past we enjoyed in our strive to play our part towards the liberation of our country. But allow me to remind you of our uncompromising slogan that we never target at all. And I quote, the commander will say, "Whom do you serve, comrades?" And all of us in unison will say, "We serve the people of South Africa." We surely served with pride and dignity. We left our homes not running away, but hoping to be armed and return so that we could face the enemy with equal force that they meted out against our people. But it was the political leadership and the ANC narrative that taught us otherwise. Upon arrival in the camps, especially after 1976, we were taught that MK was not a guerrilla army in the traditional sense. We were not like Zebra, with whom we shared trenches at Kakulaba near Malanje. We are not like Sandinista, PLO, and many other forces that were at war with their regimes simultaneously as we were. Ours was an extension of political war through arms. And this was revealed in the nature of training we went through. Political education occupied most of the time on our curriculum. This made us a true advanced detachment that learned to kill with a purpose. Our internal structures as MK specialized in sabotage and destruction of infrastructure belonging to apartheid regime. Such were done as a mobilizing tactic to instill fear in the lives of the racists and oppressors and to woo our people to identify with the African National Congress and claim their positions as their own liberators. As one of our pillars of liberation struggle, underground structures were created and led by commissars and commanders from our groups. They were politically empowered and militarily equipped to spread our ideology while ready to defend it and our people. This, dear comrades, is the MK I want to talk about today, an armed politician. It is unfortunate that as we speak today, the kind of MK cadre has been clouded. It is unfortunate that some of us who were given the mandate to lead us turned against what we stood for, sacrificed for, and committed to achieve. They turned their backs on us and forgot what we together went through for them to be where they are. An MK cadre is the person who was recruited and joined the African National Congress voluntarily, and through his or her conviction, joined Umkhonto Wesizwe to become a soldier willing to fight and defend the people of South Africa against the oppressive regime. And now that apartheid regime is no more, there was no need to have MK, as does those individuals who were trained, educated, and nurtured as the advanced detachment of the liberation struggle ceased to be soldiers when the mission of having them elapsed with the acquisition of the objective MK was formed for. We will revert to this at a later stage. Comrades, Umkhonto Wesizwe was officially disbanded by the African National Congress leadership. We do not have a structure called Umkhonto Wesizwe. However, disbanding the MK never made extinguishing men and women that formed MK. Comrades, may I request that everybody switch or mute their mic, please. Everybody except the one who's speaking, please, comrade. Through you, comrade chair. However,
Go ahead, my chief. Go ahead, my comrade. Sillo, switch off your... Sorry, go ahead.
Comrades, Umkhonto Wesizwe was officially disbanded by the African National Congress leadership. We do no longer have a structure called Umkhonto Wesizwe. However, disbanding the MK never meant extinguishing men and women that formed and belonged to MK. They are still here. Those of us who are still alive are the living testimony of what MK was like. I emphasize that former MK cadres were trained and educated. We were trained to be soldiers and master the art of war. But that training was predominantly for defensive and not offensive purposes. The primary objective was to produce an armed politician, a cadre capable of articulating the ideology of the ANC and, when need be, use force to defend it. Education we are referring to here is political education in nature and in character. We were taught about our historical past, classical politics, and contemporary politics, with the purpose of having us locating ourselves within the prevalent socio-political environment so that we can understand the prevailing political landscape and use tools of analysis to change and transform our societies towards genuine liberation. Hundreds of young people recruited after 1992 did not go through rigorous processes that we went through. They couldn't understand the purpose and mission of MK, as thus they became an insult to what MK stood for. Comrades will remember the campaigns of MK and MVA around this issue that I'm referring to. I was told not to talk about our problems. As a humble servant and obedient commissar, I won't do so, but I will speak about our mistake as former MK soldiers. And this is the failure of Umkhonto Wesizwe. When we returned from exile, we forgot that we are the advanced detachment. We stood back and allowed civilian activists to take over our role of leading the liberation struggle. Most of us didn't even want to be reintegrated and choose to do absolutely nothing. We didn't want to go back to school because we felt too old to be behind the desk. Comrades will remember that some of us dropped out from high school and senior primary classes. Some of us didn't even want to be police, but wanted to be our own bosses. Some wanted to be given the special jobs, knowing that we did not have qualifications, and became an embarrassment to the African National Congress and the country. Most of us expected to be rewarded. This was to have special pension fund, houses, and access to health. We forgot to realize that SPF was insufficient for subsidence. Houses don't automatically turn into homes, and access to health doesn't cover our families. These are the realities, comrades. It is the truth we did not wish to hear, and unfortunately, it was the receipt for our failure as controversy. We knew through our training that though we are all politically educated, we cannot all be politicians. We knew, as we were trained, that the development of a country does not rely on occupation of political office only. Yet, we did not do anything much to prepare ourselves for leadership outside the political office and in economic and social fields. Today, we want land, yet we did nothing to acquire skills to cultivate it. Our primary failure was to relinquish authority vested on us by the years we spent in the bushes and political classes. We let power slip out of our hands and did nothing to correct and redirect those who got the mandate to be public representatives. Worst of all, we did nothing to ascertain that those who came from amongst ourselves, amongst and within our ranks, upheld the principles and values we were taught in political classes we attended. They occupied the corridor of power as individuals and not as former combatants. I'm saying this because we, as MK, played no role in influencing their elections and had nothing to hold them accountable. And we did this taking it for granted that all members of the former Liberation Army will consciously sustain the character of that military establishment, Umkhonto weSizwe. If we truly want anyone to blame for deteriorating conditions in our country after fighting so much for its liberation, I say that we should all of us stand before the mirror and chastise the person on the other side of that mirror for the failure of Umkhonto weSizwe to play its role as an advanced detachment. We allowed human nature to take over our conscience. Those who couldn't make it as politicians amongst us simply embraced the notion that they were destined to struggle. This time, not for the country, but for their own survival. Those who attained political status as public representatives took that as a means of survival and forgot what motivated them to be there where they are. They used that opportunity to be better and richer than others. How many of us died as paupers, homeless and hopeless? Comrades, former MK cadres are an integral part of the ANC. You'll remember I said, when we went to exile, we joined the African National Congress first, before we could join to be soldiers of Umkhonto weSizwe. Therefore, we cannot remove and extricate MK cadres from the mother body, the African National Congress. The political education that we received was gearing us to play a meaningful role within the body of the African National Congress. Before joining the military wing, we had to be members of the ANC, and we took the oath of that organization. While training to be soldiers, we were consistently reminded and taught ANC ideology, and we did not shift from the founding manifesto of Umkhonto weSizwe, declared in December 16, 1961, and that forms the central theme of what we are discussing today. And I quote it paraphrasically. The time comes in the life of every nation where there remain only two choices: submit or fight. We have no choice but to hit back by all means within our power in defense of our people, our future, and our country. Umkhonto weSizwe will be at the front line of the people's defense. We of Umkhonto weSizwe have always sought to achieve liberation without bloodshed and civil claims. Unquote. In 1994, we achieved freedom and not liberation. As MK, we always declared that we shall defend freedom of our people. Our understanding is that once people are free, they can effectively engage and strive for liberation. The disbandment of MK as a military structure did not eradicate the principles and values it represented in the hearts and minds of cadres. That gave its impetus. MK placed in the front line means that members are long-life cadres composing a detachment that was politically advanced to articulate the ideology that informed the continuation of our liberation struggle using all means at our disposal. From the formation of the ANC and the subsequent launching of Umkhonto weSizwe, our enemy was racialism, segregation, and discrimination. There existed two social classes, the oppressor and the oppressed. The former leased out draconian law to subjugate the latter, where the latter was relegated to third-class citizens in their country of birth. Taking up arms was not aimed at spilling blood and promoting civil clashes. It was a way of using all means at our disposal to fight for liberation of South Africa. Comrade, apartheid is no more. This changed the character of the enemy that we are now facing. Our enemy now is poverty, all its ramifications. It be political, social, economic, academic, and indeed spiritual poverty. This calls for adoption of all means at our disposal to engage the new enemy in defense of our people, our freedom, and our future. The ANC has political power and control the government of the day. But political power without economic power is meaningless. And what makes this more difficult is that the ANC is not using that political power in defense of our people, our freedom, and our future. Those perambulating the corridors of power are using that political power for self-aggrandizement and self-enrichment. And yet we have cadres trained to defend the people, the freedom, and the future. As members of the advanced detachment, we should remain in the front line to give direction to the ANC in living within the principles and values that make the ANC to be the ANC. We need to ascertain that resolutions of the ANC are implemented sacrosanctly. Sorry. This includes the promises to the people on service delivery and improving livelihood. Former MK soldiers, who are now regarded as military veterans, are drawn from communities They were trained to defend the communities. As I've indicated, this never meant defending them through armed force or bloodshed. The means available include intellectual wit, social cohesion, social consciousness, political education, and a host of other activities that contribute in building new and better communities. I therefore submit to you all as MK cadres that, one, we should not just join branches of the ANC as ordinary members, but as vocal, functional, and leading members. Two, we should promote meritocracy in all ANC structure and behave in such a way that communities can use us as sources and assets on merit. Three, we should participate in ANC activities and influence the agenda and programs of the ANC to restore the ANC to its former glory. The ANC that we came to know and love while in exile and in trenches of our liberation struggle. 5, given the training and political education we received, we should all be commissars in our communities. As commissars, we should be the moral compass, the hope givers, the motivational personnel, the principles and values enforcers and defenders of our constitution, our policies, and our resolutions. We should be the voice of the voiceless and true defenders of our freedom. But comrades, how can we do that while we are scattered and disunited? How will we achieve that if we don't speak in one voice and pronounce our existence in our community and in the ANC? For ex-MK cadres to be able to express themselves in the life of the ANC, they must first accept themselves as advanced detachment. We have to accept our presence in the ANC and usurp the political program of the ANC from those who claim to know it, but were never schooled in its historical mission and purpose. I'm not calling for the establishment of a new faction within the ANC. In fact, I'm fighting for the destruction of such functions as they exist and creating a political ANC that has political education and empowering of its members to be available assets in pursuing the true and factual purpose of what the ANC was established for. Without political education, we shall never have political consciousness. People will continue to regard the ANC as a vehicle to self-enrichment and an employment agency. Only genuine ANC cadres trained and educated in the ANC of old can be able to inculcate the ANC culture as initiated by the founding fathers and subsequent leaders that brought us our freedom. And these are SMK cadres who are still alive and willing to pick up the foreign spear and march on. This is me and you and all of us here alive today. So if you ask me, what is the role of SMK in the ANC? My response will be, ex-MK are integral part of the ANC. With the capacity given to them, ex-MK must be a formidable entity that must redirect the program of the ANC and inclusively bring the broad society of South Africa on board as their own liberators. Ex-MK must, as a matter of principle, be the veins of the ANC, where its blood streams. We must be the educators and groomers of new generations to sustain the glorious and rich history of the ANC, we must be the agents of change. Comrades, the ANC remains a liberation movement, albeit in altered phase. We have not yet achieved liberation, and as does character of being a liberation movement have not changed. We have gained freedom through the ANC, but freedom means we have shared racial discrimination and repealed oppressive and draconian laws, as well as dealing with segregation. But not much has changed because political power does not automatically transcend into economic and social power. As long as the people do not have access to the means of production, equal opportunities in socio-economic sphere, and intellectual liberation, our struggle is far from consummation. A hungry stomach is an angry mind. An angry mind is a disgruntled spirit. A disgruntled spirit is an irrational being. An irrational being is a danger to society. This is what SMK cadres specifically and our society in general have become of late. But our focus is on the relationship between the ANC and us, its former combatants. Please note, I'm not talking about MK military veterans. I was instructed to avoid articulating the plight of military veterans. As thus, I will not dwell on the problem and frustrations faced by veterans. This is a topic for another day. The ANC has plundered after the democratic breakthrough. It neglected its former combatants and left them to fend for themselves. They were not given any counseling and yet expected to assimilate in their communities without giving tools to survive and be on par with the entire communities. This saw some becoming hobos, unemployed, homeless, and without skills and expertise. Nothing much was done to empower them as members of society, assets to the nation, and leaders of our society on merit. MK cadres were not recognized as a special component capacitated to drive socio-economic and political progress that could have advanced liberation of our people. Few that were vocal and articulate are the ones that were allowed to play a pivotal role, particularly in the political life of the ANC. Majority were left in the lurch. For those in the lurch, it became impossible for their families to cater for them, as they were additional burden to meager means of survival that were available to their families while they were in exile. They had to tap into such situation without aiding value. How could they be accepted and acknowledged in their community, whereas such acceptance couldn't be extended in their families? Those who are fortunate to be given a seat on the table of political decision-making structures did nothing to uplift the living standard or community involvement of their fellow combatants and the trench bearers. Neglecting SMK cadres by the ANC was throwing them under the bus. Hungry, angry, and disgruntled led them to shun away from their role as striking players in the liberation struggle. They strove to forget the past and start anew with nothing. And those fortunate to occupy economic space in the lower and middle rung of the economic ladder chose to focus on their own survival and building their family ties without political inclination and anticipation. This led to the estrangement between the ANC and its critical members, who were soldiers. The word that played a role in alienating SMK to the ANC is factionalism. Polarization of the ANC created a platform for those populist and self-serving individuals to occupy the central space and consolidate power for themselves. To do this successfully, they divided the SMK and selected few from amongst SMK to buy face and root themselves as custodians of the African National Congress. Survival of the fittest within former combatants became a norm. Constitutional policies and legislated promised were ignored by the new ANC custodians, to the peril and impoverishment of SMK cadres. The ANC undoubtedly is supposed to be the embodiment of what South Africa is and should be. This should premise on the fact that there are few people who sacrifice everything to give the ANC a voice, a body, and a life. Had it not been the sacrifice of O.R. Tambo, Juma Nokwe, Moses Kotan, Moses Mabida, Johnny Makatini, and a sea of young people that constituted the detachment, we will not have known the ANC after 1963. Had it not been the sacrifices of Kalusha Masangu, Taele Moerani, Bani Molokwan, and a host of young people that swelled the ranks of MK from June 16 detachment to Young Lions detachment, we will not have intensified the struggle at the rate we did until 1994. The contribution of SMK in the liberation struggle has always been intrinsic in the history of the South African struggle. Shunning them, ignoring them, sidelining them is a curse and an insult to tens of martyrs, heroes and heroines who laid down their lives to make the ANC be the ANC and our freedom a reality. Comrades, the ANC is a broad church. It is an organization made up of people from all walks of life. But in spite of that, there are those components of this broad church that should not be ignored. SMK is part of those unforgettable entities. The ANC, as the leading party in government, has a mandate and responsibility to preserve its character as a caring organization, whereas it is a broad church responsible for improving livelihoods in the nation. It has to have a concern to look after the group of people that gave it the positive image that made the people of South Africa to trust it and believe in it as a liberator and the leader of society. People can simply conclude that if it failed, that is the ANC, to look after the interests of the selected few that sacrifice for it, how can we expect it to cater for the interests of the broader society? The local government elections that took place on the 1st of November, a few days ago, attest to what I'm talking about. I avoided including that because I think it's a topic on its own that we will need to discuss immediately when the last results are promulgated by the IEC. We will come back to that at that stage. We should understand, comrades, that the ANC is the people, and the people are the ANC. However, there are few individuals that are elected to be the face and voice of the ANC. These are individuals entrusted with the lives and well-being of the members. In this regard, the well-being of XMK traders. But how far do we expect people who are not entrenched in the ANC, who do not comprehend the historical nature of this organization, who have no sentimental attachment to what we went through for the ANC to be where it is, to be able to cater, to care, to provide the basic survival needs of SMK? And who should be blamed for that? Our mistake was to take things for granted. We trusted too much in the ANC without considering the change in leadership who are without political acumen and social commitment. If you were to ask me, I'm just about, yes, sir.
I was saying wrap up now so that we can be able to engage. I left you because it's quite a complex, very diverse topic. But I think start wrapping up now because the key here is engagement. Okay. Just summarize whatever was remaining now, a few minutes. Yeah.
2 minutes will be enough. If you were to ask me what is the role of the ANC in SMK, I would simply say MK, as the creation of the liberation movement, was made up of a warm body. The ANC adopted MK as military wing ipso facto, taking responsibility of the warm bodies that constituted that military wing. The ANC took a decision to disband MK and as thus inheriting the responsibility to utilize the members of MK within its ranks and ascertaining that the survival and livelihoods of these former members are catered for. Therefore, the role of the ANC in MK is to make sure that they are used effectively and efficiently to promote national democratic revolution. Ascertain that the constitutionally legislated promises of the country to its erstwhile military veterans are fulfilled. But how can the ANC do anything for SMK when it is divided and polarized? How can the ANC fulfill its promises when it does not agree on the technical means to achieve them? Is the ANC renewal program possible without participation of those who are groomed and nurtured in the life of the ANC? I started this discussion by reminding us of our slogan that was not rhetoric, but a true expression of our conviction. We serve the people of South Africa. SMK is the ANC. ANC is XMK. Trying to separate the two entities leaves us with a new type of an organization that does not have history. It is not the ANC that alienates SMK, but individuals given power and mandate to lead the ANC. Therefore, it is not necessary what the ANC should do for the SMK, but what role should those elected to lead the ANC should play in the life of XMK. If SMK occupy former political space and reclaim their political agenda of the ANC, this question will fall off. This should not be done in a factional way, but you can be seen to be supportive of one faction against the other, taking sides within the same organization, in whose ideology we bought in is not nourishing it, but destroying it from within. At this stage in our revolutionary struggles, we should by now have embraced the national identity, when all of us are our own liberators, as activists and agents of change in cohort within the broader society. We cannot afford to identify certain individuals as agreeing with us and others as opposition within the same organization. The role of the ANC and MK is not determined by ANC, but by the availability, participation, and determination of SMK to be recognized and acknowledged and respected on merit. The SMK keep on compartmentalizing themselves as MKVA, MKNC, LSMV, and whatever other names. there is no tangible role that the ANC can play to uplift and transform SMK and all other formations that liberation struggle fighters unless we are united. I have tried to avoid talking about these structures to locate SMK. I avoided talking on a unified military veteran structure to unite and give voice to SMK because the focus will have shifted drastically. The political role of SMK will not be properly located because as such, a structure is radically different and expected to play a different role from the one SMK cadres should and must play. Kindly pardon my fast talking and slow talking. I am partially blind. Comrades, this is for us to discuss. Are we playing the role that we're supposed to play as SMK cadres in the life of the African National Congress or not? My name is Mojaki Keo Abetri Mojaki, Commissar MKM. I thank you.
Moss.
The participants and my personal behalf, let me thank you and also indulge the members to understand that perhaps why we would have given you more time. It's mainly because of the complexity and diverse nature of the topic, which notwithstanding that we really tried to make it succinct within certain limitations, of course. We will then be allowing what we normally do, for people to make robust reflection on your inputs and interpretation of the role of MK in the renewal of the ANC and vice versa. Suffice to say that your paper did help us to contextualize the history and the epochal evolution of MK from 61 to date and the various detachment roles in that quite illuminating history. Your paper also helped us to diagnose a lot of problems that characterize that journey: political, ideological, organizational, and to a great extent now post-liberation, socio-economic in character. And thirdly, the paper does help us to navigate on possible solutions that MK can bring to the table as we go to the Unity Conference, as well as other platforms that we seek to influence in the right direction. One of those you said we should play an active role in enhancing service delivery for our people. You reminded us that we're nothing else but servants of our people. You enjoined us to look at meritocracy as a critical element and characteristic of a current leader who can take us forward, influencing the policy paradigm of the ANC and so forth. So we are coming with a solution-based approach, not a problem diagnosis approach, which is helpful for us because ours is solution pathfinding. And lastly, you then have lifted the fact that in your view, MK in its history has always been an advanced detachment from which the ANC could draw a lot of resourcefulness. Are we that type of advanced detachment at the moment? That's a rhetorical question you're asking us. If we're not, why not? If we are we doing adequately? And therefore, challenging us, which is what the purpose of all these discussions are about. And lastly, before I open up now, you are arguing strongly that we still have a role to play, few as we are, dying as we are as species, to be agents of change. So we have a role in renewal. That's your assertion. We have a role in unity. We have a role in redefining or taking the moral compass of the ANC to a qualitative new level. So thanks for the inputs. There's many we can flare. And my take is that, comrades, this is mainly a paper that will be circulated for further dissection and comments that are written or verbal, which can be done through administration, in particular through Comrade Malik and the core team, to which you then will crystallize into a position paper that can influence our inputs in the coming platforms. I open for discussion. Thanks once again, Comrade Preston. Malik will help me in terms of administration, as we normally do, to recognize those who are raising hands, and then we allow for a robust discussion. Lastly, on my side, I want to suggest that we recognize the fact that we are here lucky to be joined by stalwarts. We have the ambassador and team, so stalwarts of the MK in their own right, leaders of the alliance, the party, the ANC. So your paper is provoking all levels of MK in their various levels. So I think it's appropriate, addressing an appropriate audience. I'll open up for discussion now. Thank you.
Just quickly, Comrade Moss, just for our process, can we start with questions first? And if we can keep our questions to the point, not long speeches. I mean, otherwise people, then they tend to actually leave. And then also if the answer can also be as pointed, so we just need to shoot straight, so to speak. If we can do that, that will actually help us to save time and actually make sure that at least when we leave here, we will leave knowing exactly what the answers are. That's actually quite important. So then people can, after all the questions, will then take comments and general inputs. But we just want to make sure that no one leaves here with a question that's not answered. So let's just start with that. We will take probably the first 3 to 5 questions if there are any. Just raise your hands and shoot.
That's in order. Let's kickstart. You introduce yourself for purposes of our networking, and then you shoot without killing us.
Yeah. And most you only see your forehead, eh? That's a little bit scary. You want to see your face. Any questions? Yes, you can go ahead, sir. We can recognize you. Put your mic on and go ahead.
Good evening, leadership. Quite an interesting dialogue. I'm Motoman Ngosi, Kharsibande region. I would not tell much, but because of the nature of the topic that is being given here. From the paper, the presentation indicates very eloquently in a sense that ANC is MK, MK is ANC. Secondly, Comrade Mojake is identifying the weaknesses, the challenges, the flaws of the African National Congress. Question is, given the nature of factionalism that has now escalated itself into a culture within the movement, where do we start if we are to take our own role as advanced detachment in trying to assist, or rather to deliver, or rather to lead our people towards NDR? I think I should pause there. Thank you.
Is there a second question? Mojake, did you get that question well?
Very, very, very clear, my leader.
Okay, we are going to take a second question then, if there is. You will just lump those two. Any other question? Okay, let's just tackle that, and then we'll deal with them as they come.
Thank you, Program Director. Comrade Ottoman, your question is very, very valid. And I promise you immediately after this session, I will post the paper I've written on factionalism and how it impacts negatively on us. Now, the question is not about factionalism, but it's how we as the advanced detachment can play in doing away with this factionalism. In simple terms, I will say to you, if we make sure, like I said in the paper, we make sure that we propagate and become the defenders of the ANC principles, values, and ideology, we will be able to achieve that. Which means there are people who are factional in our thing, not because they differ on ideological perspective from the ANC, but because of their own self-interest. Such will clearly be identified once we speak on the political educational program of the ANC and align the policies and principles and resolutions that are taken and enforcing that because an idle mind is the workshop of the day. Factionalism are there because the ANC failed in the past to have a uniting program that can be implemented by everybody. And hence people saw the ANC as a vehicle for job opportunities and self-aggrandizement because we did not have a clear program like we used to have when we were still in the exile. We knew exactly what is it that we were going to do at any given point in time. That is no longer the nature now. People are doing as they are doing because they are no longer serving the people of South Africa, but their own interest. But for us to be able to clearly understand what I'm talking about around the issue of factionalism, immediately after I post that paper, and it has specific 11 answers, possible ways that we can do away with factionalism. But predominantly on that one, we need to take over the political program of the ANC, implement the political education, and make sure that our branches and our structures are aligned not to members of the ANC, but to what the ANC stands for, which is the program and the agenda that we are supposed to achieve. We can do that. It starts with us doing that, not identifying ourselves with this or that particular faction, but with the ANC policies and principles and values. Thank you. Be sure you get the paper in the next 20 minutes or so.
Thank you very much, Mujaki. Any other question? Maybe while we are, okay, it looks like Duduzi has a question.
Not exactly, but we want to engage Keda Malik.
Okay, so you want to have input. Okay, no, that's fine then. Just 1 second. I just want to ask a question from my advantage position, if this is possible. My question is, historically, MK has always submitted to civilian rule. Now, how do we actually balance, the view that says, as an advanced detachment, we actually have this role, to guide and lead, right? As, if you like, possibly as the most enlightened, detachment or group of people within the ANC, without actually being seen as if we are looking down upon the civilian leadership that we have actually always been, groomed to actually submit to. I'm not sure if the question is clear. And that's actually prompted mainly by one of the comments in the paper that actually traces some of the problems that makes us to actually sit on the side, to actually say we allowed civilian activists to take over and we pulled aside. So I'm just trying to actually just see there if, firstly, that's not really in conflict with some of our upbringing, but most importantly, if that's actually not potentially antagonistic. You see, because you will actually have to understand the ANC also in the context, of all of the various pillars of our struggle. You see, in their equality and in their difference, in a way. I'm not sure if my question is actually clear.
I hope I understand your question. You're actually saying that the ANC has always been subjugated to civilian authority.
MK.
That
I'm saying MK as soldiers. We always subjected ourselves to the civilian rule. You see, and that's effectively how even the National Defense Force actually got to be constructed in one or another. But the issue here is that in your paper, someone might probably interpret, almost like a wedge there. So unless I'm actually not hearing you clearly there, because that's that. But let's actually just see if there is if my question is not clear, we can always take it offline.
Let me allude to your fears. You see, as former MK soldiers, I've categorically stated that we are an advanced detachment in a sense that we are trained and educated and nurtured in the life and times of the African nation. We are military trained for us to be able to defend the ideology of the ANC in particular, because we are a political army, not a guerrilla army in the traditional sense. Number two, we are educated in the politics of the ANC. We are keeping both the classical, the contemporary, and the historical politics of our country and the world over, so that we are mentally equipped to understand, to have the truth of analysis that will be able to help us assist them. That makes us an advanced detachment. Now, I say in the paper, MK should occupy the position as an advanced thing and take along the civilian, the broad society, as their own liberator. Now, the mistake that we did was, when we came back from exile, we did not take along and incorporate the civilian authority, activists in the ANC. Actually, we were taken by the civilian activists and incorporated in their program and agenda. That is exactly what happened, which was the way around instead of the correct way.
Maybe
hence we saw.
Sorry, just 1 second. Maybe that's exactly where the nub of my question is. Is to actually understand, as to what you see as a mistake that was done, or what was done, certainly on our side as XMK. Was it actually not in line with our upbringing of a force, of a military that actually subjects itself to a civilian rule? That's effectively.
You see, if you follow it within the document, the thing that happened was that we trusted the few of us that were actually in the leadership, but none of it was comrade so and so, who are from the trenches with us. Therefore, they'll be able to carry our mandate forward. But we never had anything to hold them accountable, so that they remain an integral part of us. They were then excluded from us as a component of former military soldiers into becoming politicians in their own right. That was the mistake that we actually did. But if we had them there, as from us, for us, by us, we will have held them accountable and made sure that at all lower structures, all our MK, ex-MK activities and cadres are incorporated in the whole society, and we will be then going together with the civilian activists. But what happened was that only 0.1% of us went forth, and the whole 99.99% of us were disgruntled and remained there and wanted to fend for ourselves individually, away from the ANC. That was where the problem is. Now I'm saying, now that has to be reversed. We must usurp, we must take over the political agenda of the ANC as a commissariat in our branches, in our regions, in our provinces, at national level, and push for the agenda and the ideology that we were inculcated and imbibed as soldiers of MK. And then we are not doing that to keep it for ourselves. I said we must then be able to be groomers of the new generation. We must impart what we have to the upcoming generation, so that the glory of the ANC remains intact and carried forth from generation to generation, as it was taken from the Lutu generation to the June 16th generation. It must then go beyond and be taken to the Young Lions generation and further on to the generations of today. This is what we are supposed to be doing, which we did not do in 1990 when we unbanned until 1994, and we simply abandoned everything to the civilian activities. Very few of us actually occupied the space, and their voices were actually clouded by the voice of the civilian activists that took over power.
No, that's fine. We'll leave that one there. Now the floor is open for any comments or form of engagement in the absence of any question. Duduzi, if you've got an input, just shoot, my chief.
Thanks, Comrade Malik, and good evening, comrades. Thanks, Comrade Mojaki. No, man, comrades, one is that I'm checking the issue of the topic of what should be the role of former MK cadres in the ANC. And vis-a-vis, what should be the role of the ANC in the MK structure. I think, comrades, we need to go back to our history as former MK cadres, including the history of the ANC. Remember that the ANC, as a former liberation movement, I'm saying as a former, you'll advise me, as a former liberation movement, one is that it was advancing the rebellion for decolonization and achieving freedom in South Africa. So we know that each and every liberation movement is a rebellion movement with a certain agenda that it wants to achieve. But also it has its own political army within its own ranks. Because if you remember, comrades, the issue of the 4 pillars of our struggle prior 1994, and then we had the goals of the NDR post 1994, just to mention that building a democratic developmental state, transformation of the economy, the ideological work and the battle of ideas, the international work, the mass mobilization and the organizational development. And then the critical point is that can an ordinary personnel or comrade within the ANC understand or lead such struggles within the ANC or not? The answer is no, because most of the comrades that we are having, or the new generation that we are having, they don't understand these dynamics of the organization of the strike. So the role of MK cadres is very important, especially in participating on the issue of the NTR, because if you look at the strategy and tactics of 2007, these are the 5 pillars that we need to advance as a liberation movement. But now currently, my argument is that the ANC has ceased to be the liberation movement. It has become the political party within the government. So I agree the issue of our political classes, that we need to have our political class, but also we need to revisit the constitution of the ANC as former cadres of the ANC, so that the constitution must be reviewed. You see, because if we can't revisit the constitution of the ANC, it's going to be difficult for us to participate and lead the ANC to its character. You see, because like now we know that the ANC is a broad organization. It allows everyone to come in. But if you look, the issue of the NDR is clear on where must we go as an organization. But looking into these pillars, comrades, do the ANC still advancing those pillars or not? You see, so the issue now comes back to the issue of participation of former MK cadres. That is critical, that we need to go back to the drawing board and sit down, first revisit the constitution, so that at least all of us, we go with a particular common understanding within the organization itself. Because if we can't do that, we're not going to make it, comrades. The ANC is heavily infiltrated by new recruits, not like agents, like new recruits, comrades who don't understand on where are we coming from and what are we advancing as an organization. Because also we need to borrow some other former liberation movement, like the Chama Mapaduzi of Tanzania, of how have navigated on themselves to where they are today in other liberation movements. I think I'll end there for now, Comrade Malik.
Now, thanks, Mashif. Thanks, Mduduzi. Any other contribution, comment? Yes, you can go ahead. I can hear a bit of noise at the back, but I don't know who it is. But any other
in the absence of any other comrade, I think I should use them this opportunity. Comrade Mojaki and the rest of the comrades, very interestingly, is pointing out to a strategic objective to seek to restore the values and principles of our glorious movement. But now the question is the tactical part of it, the how part of it, is also very critical. But in order for us to be probably on the same page, let me give a classical example of the situation. Correct, yes, involve yourself within the branches of the African National Congress. But a classical case in Mpumalanga, as Comrade Mojaki is quite aware on some of the issues, even though he's coming from the cold part of the world. You have these, as Comrade Ndudu was alluding to, you have these ordinary personnel who are not schooled within the values and grew up within them. But further on, the very person is now further infused with this toxic agenda of the self-serving, because he's there by virtue of him being a member of a member. We know exactly, let me indicate. There are resolutions which says former MK ought to be, or they are, ex-official members within the PEC, the PECs of the branches, to guide and assist. ANC Veterans League member within the ward, they ought to be at the center. But here is the issue, the practical situation. You are being identified, Comrade Mojaki. You are coming with your own agenda of the old ANC. You are a problem within the very objectives that we want to set, the self-serving agenda, which is, of course, the part of the factionalism. Because this entrenched culture is such that, as you correctly alluded, if we are divided as advanced detachment, where do you go and seek further strategical approach to such questions? Because if you use the Constitution of the African National Congress to say, in my branch, there are no regular reports, in my branch, as the Constitution advised, there are no regular meetings as it ought to be. In my branch, you are writing probably to the regional structure. But the regional structure is the handler of the person you are trying to raise issues about. The regional structure is being handled at the provincial level to say, we know Mojaki, do your utmost best, identify all those nonsensical problematic, because that's what we are to be. Now, that then comes to the relevant, what we call tactical approach. How do we do that unless and until the ANC itself is cleansed from this malady? I think I'm clear. Let me pause there. Take me on, my leader. Thank you very much.
Comrade Ray, your hand is up, my chief. Ray, are you sleeping on duty?
Hey, man. I didn't remove myself from mute. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, sorry. Okay, thank you, Commissar Malik. And Comrade Mujaki for the presentation. I wanted just to make a follow-up in relation to the concept of us as military being subjected to civilian rule, or as a concept that is found in modern democracy and all that. Did this concept not maybe be the reason that caused us maybe to lose the ANC? Of us fighting for freedom jealously to the end, and when we achieve whatever that we achieve out of our freedom, come back into the country, disappear into the defense force, and give power to new people in the ANC who knew literally nothing about the ANC, to take the ANC and shape our destiny. Didn't we make a mistake there? That to take somebody with few months of joined the ANC for few months, never saw the need to fight and die for freedom. You say he should be the person who leads us. The people who are prepared to die, wanted to die for our country. And you say because we happen to be soldiers, we must take the power or the authority that we might have fought and attained out of the struggle for freedom and go in the defense force and be a corporal and take this person who has done nothing and become a provincial and national leader and shape our destiny. When these people fail us, we then blame the ANC. These people knew nothing about the ANC. These people saw no need to die for their country. And it's so documented that they didn't want to die for this country. But we, the people who fought and prepared to die for this country, take everything and give it to them and shape our destiny. And we find ourselves today complaining about the very people that did not want to die, did not want a scar out of the conflict that we had between ourselves and apartheid. Now, today we're still talking about the same relationship, the relationship between ourselves and ANC. The very same people forgot us. In simple terms, what we did as MK, we came with a cake of freedom and put it on top of the table and say, here's a cake. Please have your share, but it was caught by the MK that we participated in this. And people took the whole cake. And we've been complaining for 27 years for a cake that you came with in our hands. Now we're still trying to define the concept as to what are we supposed to do with the role and all that. There's nothing like that. In exile, who was the civilian authority in exile? There was no civilian authority. Our leadership were members of MK, were led by military men. All the way until we come into the country. What civilian authority? Because members of the NEC were members of MK predominantly. And they were able to channel the whole concept up to the last day of the negotiation process. Now, what has happened, if we check now, this concept that we're fighting about and all that, of us and our role, the role and all that, all of us members of MK were more than 35 years in the ANC. And they were trying to convince people who are in the ANC for 3 years that they must understand and accept our role. How possible is that? It's not going to happen. We just don't, I think, maybe we don't understand the power politics. And there's something that we missed about power and democracy. Democracy cannot be protected by democratic means. It's documented all over the world. Modern democracies, that's why, are protected by nuclear weapons. They're not protected by the people. All modern democracies, you must know, you touch a button, there's a nuclear button that is waiting for you. That's democracy. You see, what we're seeing today in South Africa with the elections and everything, confirm that story. As to, if you fight for democracy, you fight for freedom, you must have certain mechanisms to protect your democracy. But all in all, to summarize the whole concept is, Commissar Mjake, is really, are we not supposed to review the whole concept of us honestly believing that we as military people, the people who are prepared to fight and die for freedom, is it very authentic that we should give power total power to civilians. Is it realistic? Is it true? Why in Russia, the Russian democracy, the Russian freedom is still protected by military men? There's Putin there. It's not true civilians that are there responsible. You can go all over the world. Why is it still contested in Africa, in Latin America, in Europe? Why there's this contestation about civilian rule and the military? Is that not maybe going back to us that we should also check as to whether are we not maybe supposed to say let's balance the two, not give total civilian rule and wait on the sideline and wait for somebody to say our interests are covered. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Comrade Ray. Dr. Konfi, you're going to be next, but I just needed to just plant something there. We probably don't really have to talk about it at all. Is the fact that the issue of civilian and non-civilian is actually a binary, as in you're either in uniform or you're not in uniform. I mean, of course, you can argue about someone who's a reservist as to where they stand and all those type of things, but Putin is a civilian. He might have a background in the KGB, and but that's exactly what we always had. In Mandela was ex-MK, Zuma ex-MK, and I mean the people actually negotiated. Were in the forefront of our negotiations in Codesa and all those. The majority of them were effectively, people like us, in many ways, and we have the outcomes that we actually have. So, but that's more on the past. I just wanted us to probably focus more on the way forward. That is the solutions, because the fundamental issue and the question is what should be. So now we're trying to define that. What should be the relationship between these two structures? That's effectively that. But I wanted to just plan that there. I mean, I didn't want to raise a discussion over that. Dr. Konfi, the floor is yours, my leader.
Good evening, comrades. My apology, I arrived a bit late. I was just coming back from work. I thought I would not say anything, but I just thought, let me just throw in this word of caution. The topic here is focusing on ex-combatants of the MK and their role in the ANC and vice versa. And the mistake that we must not commit is to forget that when we went to Kabwe in 1985, one of the slogans that we pushed, I remember having a long discussion with Comrade Tami Mnyele in Botswana, and we were discussing as we were preparing for the Kabwe conference. We said that the principles that we were talking about were around the issue of every combatant a patriot and every patriot a combatant. That is point number one. Point number two is that you must not forget the fundamentals of MCW, which is military and combat work. When I decided that I'm not a civilian and I'm a soldier as a young man, I decided also at the same time that I'm never going to go to exile, except if I was going to find myself at the point of death. And the third thing is that you must remember the detachments that we have in the MK. Not all those detachments belong to exile. So we must not confuse the problems that we are having in the ANC as a military-civilian problem. But we must be able to define the role of former officers who were at home and who were abroad, but who had made a decision to be the members of the People's Army in the ANC of today. That was just the word of caution that I was begging comrades that they must take care of as we discuss this. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Con. Any other contribution? And then, of course, we're going to give Mujaki an opportunity to reflect as well. And maybe he might actually want to, have a look at all those type of general inputs. But is there any other? Ray, is your hand an old
it's an
one?
old hand. Sorry, it's an old hand. It's an old hand.
Okay. When an yeah. Okay. Any other contribution somewhere? Comment.
Can I just come in for the sake of time?
Okay. Go ahead.
Now I'm very sure I have to speak. Someone is disturbing me here.
Yes, we need to see. You always see is your abs most of the time, but we know that they are quite good. But now we can see you very well. We can even see your dimples. Go ahead.
Oh, I have such. I was not aware. I'm quite worried for this. I think we need to take this topic further. The sooner the better. The issue of civilian versus military. Seemingly we missed it, and it is well captured there. I am talking about XMK as the advanced detachment. If it is an advanced detachment, it means that it belongs to a certain detachment but has better advantage over that particular detachment. And the detachment that I'm talking about there, or that the ANC is talking about there, that we become advanced of, it's our community, it's our country, it's our people, it's our society. It is the civilian component that we have mobilized as part of the 4 pillars of our struggle, that we make sure that these people are part of us. Now we go to join them with advanced ideas, advanced equipment, so that we can be able to empower them better. So that ultimately they become their own liberators. That concept should actually have been clear. I further accepted that the ANC is MK, is XMK, and XMK are ANC. The two are integral. You cannot divorce the other from the other one. But the only thing that I regarded as a mistake in the whole process was that we, the advanced detachment, neglected our duties, our responsibilities to empower these members of the detachment who has to take the liberation forward. We relegated our powers and our duties to them, but they were not schooled in the ANC. They were not in the chart in the policy of the ANC. They did not clearly understand the agenda and the ideology of the ANC beyond liberation. To them, this national democratic liberation that was not part of it. But unfortunately, it appears that even amongst us, the people regarded freedom as liberation. That's why I posted this thing that I posted earlier on liberation and freedom. So that people should understand that what we achieved, what we acquired was freedom. But we are far from acquiring liberation. I think I should have sent the former document that this one was actually enlarging on. So the comrades could understand the whole concept. XMK. We are not sitting here because we are soldiers. If you want to be a soldier, go and join SADF. That is where you find our soldiers. Our problem is that we are going to come up with this notion of us soldiers and think alongside the Cape mentality. That MKVA can then wear military regalia and dance and whatever and have guns. We are not. That chapter was closed. We are a soldier of a different type. Soldier of political wits. Soldier of intellectual advancement that we see. Soldiers empowered politically and ideologically to pursue the national democratic position. That is what makes us better than others. Because these things, we are not starting now. We are not just joining the ANC front. It is something that was nurtured in us throughout the years of our training. I said somewhere on the paper that, you see, political education in the camps occupied a wider space than physical, the tactics and whatever other things. Most of our time was dealt on political things because we are political armed politicians. That is one point that is very, very critical. Now, if we are saying, how are we going to do that in their branches when these people who are in the branches are being supported by those above there? Who should be blamed for that? Our own negligence of our authority and our power and our position in the liberation, when we came back in 1994, is what created all this. That's why I'm saying we must go and look at the mirror and blame the people that we see the mirror for this thing that in my branch, someone who does not have political acumen, somebody who was just recruited yesterday, now because he's a populist, he's now been made my chairperson and takes them from me. Hence, I'm saying, corporate, soldiers, combatants, we must usurp the political agenda of the ANC from branch level, from regional level, provincial level, even at the NEC, so that we can be able to realign and redirect the ANC to what we were taught the ANC to be. Because the liberation struggle is not over. I will not agree in principle with my leader when he says that the ANC is now a political party, not a liberation. You see, the people that are now governed, we have relinquished our powers to, have decided to go that route and shift away paradigmically from the ideological perspective of the African National Congress, which is the absolute and total liberation of our people, where every combatant becomes a patriot, and where every patriot becomes a combatant. You see, where everybody come together, not because you are a soldier, a former soldier, or because you are a former activist, but because you are a patriot who brings the interest of the society of South Africa first before your own personal interest. You are using your military training, your PMWC, your whatever that you've learned there in the art, and your political education that you are coming up with to enhance and advance the racial democratic revolution. You are an advanced detachment in the sense that you are supposed to be taking the lead in making sure that the detachment, the citizens, the voters, the communities of South Africa, the people of South Africa, whom we are advanced detachment of, this detachment goes along with you towards liberation. It's a process that we have not started. Comrade Ottoman and others who are my other groups, will remember that I'm talking about that even now, after 27 years of liberation, we don't have the classical working class in South Africa. Why? Because those that we delegated power to and relegated our authority to did not even understand how these things should come up. But now, we are talking about the national democratic revolution. How do you start to doing that without having a properly comprehended working class in South Africa? In South Africa, we don't have a bourgeois class. We don't have a class that can say this is a bourgeois class. But we have what we call the monopoly capital. Whether it's black or white or whatever, let us not. But we have that monopoly capital that cannot transform into a class. Because within its own component, if you say the white monopoly, there are millions of whites who cannot benefit from the means of production. Therefore, it cannot be a bourgeois class. It becomes a strata that has to be dealt with. But who can be able to advance that? It's you and me, because we know about this. We know classically how is a working class formed and how is it constituted. Who makes part of that whole thing, so that we can be able to push that from our branch level, from our factory floors where we are working, from our social interactions where we are, because we are empowered to do that. But we have neglected our responsibilities to the people who do not even understand the ABC of a revolution, as you and me have come to be taught. I would have a problem around that whole concept. The kind of soldier that I'm talking about is a soldier that was militarily trained, but intellectually empowered to be able to know that you are not a killing machine. You kill with purpose. I thank you.
No, thank you. To those late joiners, welcome. We're almost at the tail end of our program. If there is any input, I just have one question though. And I'm like, this question is not directed literally at you now, but it's probably a question for all of us. Now, the question is the relationship between ex-combatants and their agenda with, let's say, the Veterans League. I mean, Comrade Ray mentioned, for instance, the reality that certainly our generation, the minimum would be like 35, 36 years within the ANC. And a bulk of us, certainly in the Young Lions, are not 60 yet, but slowly creeping towards that direction in one way or another. Now the question is, we've got all these ideas about playing a role in the political education of the ANC, but then also playing an active role in the life of the ANC. If I were to sum up, everybody's input in that, in our branches, in all the structures being there, and all those sort of things. But my question is, what should be the relationship between us and the Veterans League, if any, given the fact that there is they are a league of the ANC and we are not. And effectively, they've got leverage, they've got a seat on the table, and we are just looking up from outside inwards. Any take on that? As I say, it's not directed to anyone. Should there be a relationship between the structures?
Comrade Malik.
Yes, sir. Yeah. Go ahead.
You see, I because through your instructions, I had to not discuss the issue of the leaks and the other things, because it is imperative that we look into the whole thing. Now, how do you expect the African National Congress to recognize you as ex-military veterans when you are so divided, when you can't even speak in one voice, when you have your own personal interest above that of the collective? How do we expect us to be taken serious when we act as individuals, if when given the power and authority to do so, when we cannot even look at the interests of our own people? You see, I am a member of the Veterans League. I'm 65 years now. I'm a member of the Veterans League, but very, very inactive. You know what makes me inactive in that whole thing? Because when I come here, because it is all people who were members of the ANC, but who never participated in the political life of the ANC, who are now there in my community. Only one or two people that can be able to engage and talk political issues. But the ANC, the leagues as they exist, Women's League, because you've got old women who are supposed to be part of the Women's League, the ANC Veterans League, they are a voice. When Snooki speaks, he speaks for everybody. But today, if Malik tries to speak for us, the voice of Buddha will be there and negate what he's saying. Mujaki will also be there pushing his own line. How do you expect anybody to recognize our existence when we are divided ourselves? That, before we respond to that, we'll not be able to say, how do we relate and interact with the leagues like the Veterans League, with the ANC itself, because it does not know to whom is he talking to when he starts talking to the veterans. There are so many structures now. Moja has his own, Moja has his own, Gregory has his own, the late Baba Kepapatre has his own, who is MKMDA, who is MK Veterans, that has to be recognized as a special league that must have a seat on the table. Fix our things first, take us to the conference, let us come up with the elected leadership that will represent all of us and speak for us.
Okay, thanks, sir. Thanks, my leader. Comrade Tolo, open. The floor is yours, my leader.
Thanks, Commissioner Malik, and comrades in this forum. I think I've been listening very carefully from the speaker, and I must say very enlightening and presentation, but also empowering. And perhaps my question then becomes, because these discussions must find expression in the form of implementation, and perhaps this suggests that there must be a process developed to lobby the ANC into allowing this process to be undertaken. For instance, if any one of us is to play a role in the political role in the ANC, in Johannesburg, for an example, there's a commissar of the region who is an elected member of the RC at a conference. He then, because it's a he, I'm not discriminating, so I'm not using a discriminatory word, but because it's a he in Joburg, he then invites comrades to come and participate in this subcommittee of commissariat. And it has taken the form of inviting those that have gone into the political school of the ANC and graduated, notwithstanding that there's invitation forwarded to comrades like myself and others who are from MK, but it's left with discretion. It's not a mandatory process that becomes mandatory for the ANC regime or structure in the PEC or national to invite ex-MK members. Now, how do we then take this process forward? Because it suggests it would have been a structure or a foundation of ex-MK or an NGO of ex-MK that would invite itself through a lobby to the ANC and formalize a relationship and then begin to make themselves available. It then becomes easy. But if it's to undergo a process of being elected into a structure, we know the discussions we've had in many other forums about many of our members getting elected into executive positions of the ANC. It's such a difficult thing. But my interest in this is how do we then formalize this process and how do we make it mandatory to even a branch to invite a member of MK who resides in a particular ward or branch of the ANC, because then it will be easy for this discussion to find expression in the branches and the life of the ANC. I thank you.
Thanks, Comrade Opa. Now, look, there is no easy answers on this. What we're trying to do is to actually find linkages with the various structures of the movement, as you have stated. What we're trying to do is like literally an outreach program among ourselves, and trying to firstly revive that revolutionary fire which has died, somehow over the years. Now, one of the things that we're actually working on is to have, something that we can actually deposit, if you like, within the ANC structures in terms of all these deliberations, where we can say these are the views that are actually coming from some of us. We can't say these are the views that are coming from ex-MK, because that would be a misrepresentation. But we can be able to say that, given the fact that we are ex-MK in our own individual rights, we can be able to say these are coming from us, as a grouping, and effectively, hopefully, they can be able to do something, and we can be able to actually redefine the relationship we have with the ANC and society. That's really the whole point, is to actually be able to showcase some of our capabilities that have been hidden by our misery over the years. As you know, most people actually see our anger and our poverty and everything else. They are not able to actually enjoy some of the things that the ANC invested in us in many ways, that we can be able to actually contribute. So we will accept any engagement if you can create a pathway, with that structure, with that commissar, and we can actually just sit and actually see how best to actually mainstream some of these ideas, into the body politic of the ANC, because that's effectively where it should find expression. And of course, we are hoping to have a meaningful discussion with the OR Tambo Political School, and so hopefully that will be a channel that we can actually have, in showcasing what we're able to do, certainly in this area. Lastly, it is clear that one of the things that is actually critical on our side is that if we hope to see change, we have to be that change first. Now, the reality is that we're not going to have an impact if our ideas and politics are still stuck in 1988. The world has moved on. Now, we need to actually show the dynamism of actually showing that whatever we learned then, it does evolve, and we evolve with it, and we're actually able to adapt to new conditions, and in that way, we can form a more impactful, make a more impactful contribution, in the ANC and in society in general. But I will actually take you up on the side on that and see if there is another pathway where we can actually have those type of linkages. We will welcome that. Comrade Ray, I think your hand is up, my chief.
Thanks, Commissar. I just wanted to comment on this one of our relationship maybe with the ANC or with the Veterans League.
Yeah, specifically the Veterans League. That's the question. I haven't felt that it has been answered properly.
If you follow the effort and how the Veterans League was created, I think people who can remember people who were involved in MKMVA, when MKMVA spent every possible strength in trying to make sure that it gets armor voting rights. And what happened was the ANC came with the notion that says, we as members of MK, we're going to be given representation in all the structures of the ANC as ex officio, starting from the NEC, the PEC, the REC, all the way to the branches, as a compromise for us as members of MK, because we wanted voting rights and wanted league status. And that was the compromise, that no, don't worry, you'll have ex-official status. And that was never honored. MK, as we speak now, let's leave the part of the division and all that. MK doesn't have the ex-official status now in the NEC. We don't have representation now as we speak as a structure. Let's leave when now we're having our own problems of MK National Council and MKMVA. But that was not honored. It was not honored in the PECs. We don't have representation in the PECs. We don't have representations in the REC and all that. Let's go and check the Veterans League. ANC decided to accept a structure that didn't have members. The Veterans League doesn't exist. There are no branches, there are no RECs, we struggle with the PECs. Forever we're trying to establish a structure for the structure to exist. Therefore, the constitution of the ANC accepted an existence of a structure that doesn't have members. If we, members of the ANC coming from exile, were still struggling with the 40 years of continuous service inside the country, where were they going to get those people from? Those people are not there. They're not there. At one stage, I think Comrade Omri can confirm that from MK we even asked that we must help in Gauteng create the structure, and the structure is not standing up to today. The structure is not there. It's a structure that is having voting rights, and that structure is not there. Then we've got us members of MK who are there, we're existing everywhere, but we don't have voting rights. This is what has made members of MK to be pawns in the ANC fights, because there are these thousands of members who don't have voting powers and don't have anything. But these members have got so much problems that they want help from anybody who can give them anything. And those people end up being manipulated by those who've got voting rights. Remember, those who've got voting rights can be able to buy 2 beers for members of MK. It looks small, but members of MK do not have anything. They can't have voting rights. They don't have a structure that is legitimate, but they are suffering. They've got all sorts of problems. The organization doesn't have an answer for them because it didn't even see the need for us to have voting rights. If you're saying us, we're the best of the best, we're in advanced detachment, why didn't you give us voting rights? How do you find yourself having an advanced detachment that you didn't even give 5% of voting rights? Then that advanced detachment of yours is wandering on the streets without food, without employment, without anything. When there's a problem, we're always brought in. We must come with our politics, we must come with our MCW and everything. This is what has collapsed us and makes us members of MK to be a source of problem within the organization. Where there's a conflict or where there's a problem, you'll see a footprint of MK. Because in MK, these are the people that you can source with less than 100 rand. And those comrades can create all sorts of problems for anybody. Therefore, what we need to revisit as an ANC or as other alliance structures or other members that are concerned with our situation, the status of MK members or structures needs to be reviewed. Remember, if the ANC cannot give us the recognition that we expect, who else can give us the recognition? Go and check in the municipalities. People in the municipalities will never consider an MK member. Why should you consider an MK member in the municipality? It doesn't have any voting rights. It's not going to help you in anything. They only consider the latest now, the people they consider most is the Youth League. They've got voting rights. They can make you a councillor. They can bring you somewhere. A member of MK has got no influence. He can talk his politics from Russia to Ukraine, but he's got no role. Therefore, I think we need, I still insist myself, despite the fact that we ourselves were the champions of this concept that says we are a structure that is coming to its depletion and all that, I still believe that we need to be considered and given some form of recognition by the ANC. Because if we check MK in its current form, MK in other areas has got numbers that are more than the ANC. I can give you a practical example. There's somebody coming from Egruleni. Egruleni, MK members in other branches are many and far more than ANC members. And you find now there's this problem or whereby you find members of MK in other areas are more than members of the ANC. And these members of MK, for the better part, are the members who are brought in to destabilize all sorts of processes. Therefore, I still believe that the status of the Veterans League should be reviewed in line with our status as members of MK, because I believe that we still need a review of our status. We still need to have a say in the ANC, given the fact that our problems in 20 years have not been resolved and they're getting worse. Therefore, I suggest that maybe for future consideration or our discussion as members of the MK outside to this platform, we can have something that says, is it not really possible that we can again revisit the process of saying, is it really not the best thing that we should also be given such status, so that I think we can be better positioned to solve most of our problems that we're facing today, outside expecting all these other leagues to do whatever favor for us without us being involved in the process. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Comrade Ray. Just probably a follow-up question quickly on that. Would it help if, let's say in the planned conference of XMK, we were to move with a resolution that says the Veterans League must be reconfigured to actually admit all XMK within it? I mean, you have stated how few they are, and the fact that they are literally effectively not there. And the other reality, obviously, is the fact that the only reason why the bulk of XMK is out of that league, it is because of the age issue. But at some point, will either die or will also be 60. One of the two is going to happen, right? So now the question is, why not? Is it a possibility that could sort this problem to actually just create a pathway for us to be in there? Ray, do you want to try that?
You wanted me to say something? Okay, sorry. Yeah, I think, Commissar, for instance, let's take the practical one where we were invited by Comrade Pacey, I think a week ago, and where he insisted that I must come in that meeting and participate in the meeting. But myself, I'm too far away from 60 years, you see. But I've got almost 35 years being a member of the ANC, right? But the people that we're finding in that structure are people who've got, in the true sense of the word, less than 20 years of continuous service of the ANC. Therefore, I'm not sure how can it be branded, but I think the concept that they're coming with of saying members of MK, at least, maybe there should be maybe a review of the age for members of MK. Let it be not the 40 continuous service, because the biggest number of MK members, especially the young lions, are at 30 to 35 years of continuous service with the ANC. I think something like that maybe could make a difference if the ANC is still insisting that they don't want to give us the league status. But myself, I believe that we need to have the league status and be able to fight for our own battles. When we go there, I think the people who are in the Veterans League, they've got their own challenges. And I think we're going to create another platform whereby there's going to be conflict between ourselves and them, because they've got their own situations and we're coming with our own big basket of problems. And I doubt as to whether can they find it very kindly that we're bringing all the problems of MK in that space. Thank you.
Okay. Is there any other question? Motorman, you're going to be next. Any other comment? Someone who hasn't said anything? I'm looking at the time. We need to wrap up as well. Like there might be someone who hasn't said anything and they would like to say something. Gone. Okay. Motorman, take us home. Just to the point, wrap it up, and then we move forward.
Thank you, Commissar. Basically, I'm a bit now relieved because Comrade Ray is retracting from a very contagious space of trying to now probably start another battle from another front with the Veterans League. But your question is to say, how can the Veterans League assist, is quite relevant. There are members of the Veterans League who qualify, even in Mpumalanga, though Comrade Ray has spot on to say it's non-existent because you have few people who are now resisting the change, who are now resisting for other people to enter and occupy the space and even further the renewal, revival of the ANC. That is a fact. But it's also very correct to say it's either a given the status of MK is revived within the various stratas of the ANC, because on its own, it's very, very powerful. It is in line with what Comrade Mujake has been insisting on to say, get into that space and then make yourself relevant, usurp the what you call the direction and give direction, or rather usurp the powers and give direction within the masses of the ANC. That's very important. It's either this or that, but the given is very important. What is quite critical, as an immediate task, is the question of all-inclusive conference. As a unified force, we can move forward and then probably have more impact on what we are suggesting here. the Veterans League, if you go to the constitution of the Veterans League, once it is established, the Veterans League constitutionally, it has even powers to recommend within the ANC to say the issue, the problems of MK or male veterans must be sorted out in this particular fashion. It's very, very important. It's a very, very powerful structure. The only thing is, Comrade Mujaki, we need to go back. I think we need to go back, and then probably that's another way of usurping so that we can be in a position to achieve what we set out ourselves. Thank you very much, leadership.
Awesome stuff. Commissioner Mujaki, I'll give you about 30 seconds, just to like to have the last word, and then we can go and have our last meals. Unless there is a question somewhere. Comment. Yeah. Take us home, my leader.
Thank you very much, comrade, and all colleagues on the platform for inviting me in this very, very important gathering. I hope I'll be part of the family and no longer just come in as a guest henceforth. I am quite worried about the approach that we are actually envisaging now, especially the last speakers, Comrade Ray and Comrade Watuma, around the issue of demanding the specific or the position within the ANC to be recognized. I think the question that I posed when you first asked that question on how do we relate to these structures still stands. The question that I asked still stands. How do you want us to be recognized before we are united and speak in one voice? That is very, very critical. And well, comrades, we are enough on the Veterans League. Please don't disturb my space. Let us deal with our issues there. As the comrade has correctly said, we have our own type of problems that are unique and different from the rest of you. Our main problem that we have as veterans is that what kind of legacy are we leaving? What role have we actually effectively played? Because the ANC fell in our hands. That will not be able to be adding all the problems on those type of problems that we actually tackling now as the Veterans League. So we don't want your problems. Deal with the problems of MK different. But I think the topic was very rich, Comrade Malik. That we need to take further. This was just a discussion. It's not the cut and paste truth that is there. Let us engage. I'm sure Comrade Malik has already forwarded it to the group, to all members of the group that are here. Engage with it. Let us talk about it. We can still carry on talking on the WhatsApp group on the topic, because I still have other ideas that I want to throw in on that. And I think Comrade Malik will be very appreciative that immediately hereafter we should also look into the role of XMK in an association type of a structure, in an MKMVA or whatever you call it. What should be our role there, rather than what is the role of that structure on us? We need to look at that very extensively. Yeah. I'll just post something on the group for that. Comrade Tenji, I'm told that you are here, my commissar. I'm very, very grateful. You are one of the last employees that I have when I was still working for the ANC. The last time I engaged with you was in Stellenbosch. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you very much, Comrade Malik and Comrade Mbudelo, for inviting me here to this group. I hope, Comrade Ray, I did not disappoint, as you were worried that I might disappoint. I hope I did not disappoint. And I've set the standard where you wanted it to be, and I can promise you, next time it will be higher than this. I wonder whether we have the ladder to occupy that. Thank you all. May God bless you, even if I'm not a believer. May Allah be with you, even if I'm not a Muslim. May your gods and your ancestors be with you all as you prepare to sleep. Please don't dream about me. I've got enough people dreaming of me. Thank you very much, comrades.
No, that's fine. Thank you very much. Well, comrades, unless there is someone who wants to say something else, we are at the end of our program for today. And I just want to thank each and every one of you for being here. I mean, those who joined us late, You will be able to get the recordings, and of course we'll always try and crystallize and summarize all these things that we actually discuss here. Moss is not here. He opened the session, but as you know, he's actually in Mozambique at the moment, so he must have got lost, with the signal there or something like that. We can only hope that at least he's safe. Now, next week, we'll continue pivoting on our MK issues, as hopefully we are moving forward towards the conference of XMK, and of course, most importantly, towards the anniversary of XMK in December. So we'll continue with a pivot, in that way. So all we sought to do today was to actually just create a bridge away from the ANC issues that have occupied us, in our first part of our series of strategic dialogues, to actually then focus more on MK-related issues. So next week, we will be focusing possibly on one of the two topics, but we'll confirm those as soon as possible on Wednesday. It is going to be a security cluster related problem, topic, so to speak, or something related to one of the conference resolution papers, we would like to see being discussed and tabled in an XMK conference, and that's effectively what we're trying to do here. But we will actually be able to announce those in the next day or so. We will know exactly what's all about, but it's going to be MK related in any case, in particular, and it could be broader than MK, but still either military veteran, whatever language you want to use, or liberation war veteran, related. That's effectively that. But once again, thank you very much. If you've got any ideas, any topics, please drop us, a message, ideas. We would really love to hear from you, and we can continue to improve and enjoy ourselves in this. Please stay safe, and yeah, that's it. Have fun. Enjoy your evening. Thank you very much. Good night. Ciao.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, comrades.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.